something I find weird as well is that in How to Train Your Dragon, maybe it is just the way that it has to work, but the remake credits the book as what it's based on, which of course, it is, but I do find it interesting because but I mean, really it's based on the movie.
It's the movie. It's obviously the movie.
It's the movie, yeah. But I mean, who cares about that? But that's what we're talking about today, How to Train Your Dragon. I figured that the best way to start would probably be to do the sort of overall general takeaway of it's a bit retro here. We'll do the sort of right to left. What is the broad perspective on the remake? We'll start with the remake. So, what do you think, Platoon? What do you think of the remake of How to Train Your Dragon?
Oh, it's one of those incredibly irritating films where someone says, "What did you think?" and the answer is only really that it didn't really make me think. Because I hadn't seen the original, so I watched them both back to back.
Which one did you watch first, by the way?
I watched the original first, which might have been a mistake, if only because, my impression is that it's not as like massively deviating as Lilo and Stitch is. The people who say that it's virtually a shot-for-shot remake are more or less correct. I didn't detect as many massive breaks from the story. But then the question ceases to be like, why did you make these changes? And becomes, well, then why did you make the film? Because there's virtually nothing to write about in terms of like the differences it makes to its story. There's a couple of minor changes to characters, I suppose. Most of the additional runtime seems to be finding Astrid new lines to say that make her slightly more irritating. An attempt to give her a little bit more agency, which makes her even more irritating still, putting her in scenes where she wasn't and stuff like that. Obviously, it doesn't look as nice. The action doesn't really work in like semi-live action because real actors don't play off green screens quite so well. That's kind of it, really. It's just like a very nothing burger of a film. But hey, at least it had some of the story beats of the original, so that was nice to see.
Yeah, I guess I have a somewhat similar take on this movie. If the question is what we thought of it, in one way, there's a similarity between this and Lilo and Stitch, being that the best thing about the Lilo and Stitch remake is all the music they lifted from the original. So I suppose I could say that the best thing about the How to Train Your Dragon remake was a lot of the music that they basically just lifted from the original. But you're kind of going to get a Platoonian-esque take from me as well, because I really did not enjoy it at all. I thought it was a downgrade in every sense. I think that while it was very, very similar to the originals in terms of its story beats and its plot, there are a lot of little changes here and there that I think are essentially, barring a few tiny exceptions, makes it just obviously worse than the remake. Visually, it is a clear downgrade. It in terms of just the color, the ability to be immersed now that it's live action. This may be more than a lot of the other ones suffers from that. And we'll get into that as we talk about the film and the fights and the things that people do and what you can kind of get away with in live action versus animation. But I really didn't like it. It's just a downgrade in every way from the remake or from the original, and we'll be talking about why. So yeah.
But you enjoyed The Last of Us Season 1, even though it's a downgraded retelling of the game. Get over it. Oh my god.
Something can be a downgrade and still enjoyable and still good.
It's just The Last of Us Season 1. It just comes up occasionally, constantly.
Yeah, it was a pretty good season of TV. It's good season of TV.
Is it not the best adaptation of a game so far? Is there anything that beats it out that's faithful?
Got wrecked.
Oh, well, yeah, but so this is the thing. There are two categories. Arcane, as far as I'm concerned, doesn't even remotely resemble League of Legends. It's just like not even close. Yeah. Meanwhile, The Last of Us, a lot of people would argue a lot of its greatest strengths as a season is through the fact that it was faithful. So I don't know. It just seems weird that that wasn't given more of encouragement to. It's like, yes, pursue this, but unfortunately, I suppose it's a double-edged sword, isn't it? Because to remain faithful about season 2, kind of went over that a little earlier. Not something you want, but they did mostly. Not Minecraft. That's fair as a suggestion. Minecraft was pretty good.
That's true.
Very similar to the game too.
I saw kids I saw kids today saying chicken jockey. I'm not fucking kidding with you.
Yeah.
I can believe that.
I saw kids today saying chicken jockey.
Did you slap?
Because their dad was, I was talking with their dad. Long story. And he was telling me, yeah, like whenever people are pressuring people into something else, they say chicken jockey, like it's a replacement for the phrase peer pressure or something. Some weird young kid, just rephrasing of it. It's all terrible. All right, it's awful. But that's the world.
I'm sure it affects you personally too, because that is Minecraft now. Chicken jockey.
I know, isn't it? It's
Which is amazing
awful.
because Minecraft is such a has such a huge cultural footprint as the game, but the movie, look at it go. Getting in there.
Man, and
Beautiful.
it's gonna be. I hate it.
So
Mubes, what do you think of How to Train Your Dragon remake?
there's so many ways you could take this as an initial discussion. One of the things I obviously once said is that when crafting stories with these different alternative methods of telling them, there's different strengths, different weaknesses, and you got to try and play into them or play against the latter. So with an animated film, the big thing that you get out of it is like as we've talked about in previous iterations, it's like you get a pass almost on a lot of physics. You get the integration of really crazy elements for free because it's all going to be delivered in the exact same way. Meanwhile, like other options will give you sort of mixed results. We've talked about how different things integrate, and so when translating, you need to take consideration for exactly why basically every decision gets made, and then what that's going to mean when moving it into different places, as opposed to, well, this was there, now it's here. How do we do it? CG, that's good enough. Let's go. Green screens or whatever have you. It's been mentioned. There are so many different things that pop up that I think are a lot more subtle this time around, but that in a way crystallizes the conversation about live action adaptation and why this is not. I mean, we have bad results generally speaking for a lot of stories that are coming out anyway, but particularly this action, this notion, this conversion has extremely consistently bad results. And if this one is going to be considered the king of them now, for however long that lasts, it's almost good in the sense that we can now talk about the much more specific, fundamental, artistic failures. Because Lilo and Stitch is so awful, so fundamentally fucking abysmal, so possible to be picked as one of the worst ever, that it will distract from a lot of the important, difficult aspects of transferring from animation to live action. So this film, I'm hoping we can touch on a lot of that, because they fail in many significant ways of things that I was actually going to be quite looking out for. So just to give one example, in animation, every last expression that is crafted from any given artist, they have to think about it, they have to put in hours of work. So any word that is spoken, they're going to be like, all right, so they're feeling this way. I can do that with eyebrows here, eyes here, mouth here, nose here, compared to their original model. And then, of course, you hope the voice actors put in the excellent performance. Like that it's all going to be a big collaborative effort, and it needs to be. We've talked about how stop motion is probably going to be the most reliably quality format for storytelling, because it takes so fucking long to do everything. It'll be so much more considered. All things will be thought about for longer. Now, live action is not. It's not like live action can't do that. It's that they have the option to not do it pretty easily. In fact, there's several actors I wish to speak about by comparison to their animated counterparts that clearly were not given, I would say, proper direction. And have created a much less, let's say, endearing and immersive experience. And that would be one aspect of how this is going to already fall apart. And once we've stacked up enough to say why everything is a strict downgrade, and they've not taken advantage of where I was going with this originally, of the format change, that you have a responsibility to try and push all the things that live action can be benefited from, whereas animation maybe can't, and vice versa. You need to minimize all of the things that you're going to be hit for by changing your approach. So, we're probably going to talk about all of them, and that is the way I'm trying to lay out broadly that I did not like this compared to the original for obvious reasons, despite There is one thing, and I've already told Frankie what I think it is, and I imagine that you'll be able to guess what it is. There's one thing that I think this benefits from, whereas the animated film didn't have as much potency, even though it's a very strong element regardless. There's only one thing that it could be considered an improvement, but it's still kind of a touchy subject in terms of going over exactly what we're dealing with. But almost, I think, everything else, there's an extensive argument to explain why it's a complete downgrade, and that they didn't take care with what they were doing here, as far as I'm concerned. Sticking to the original story, to me, should not be something that we give massive celebration of. I consider that the bare minimum. We're just in a nightmare world where that is not the bare minimum. And so it encourages everybody to give this crazy praise that I think is entirely undeserved, because the standard should be way higher for how good is your story when you're copying an excellent story. And when I say copying, I mean this is the closest to copying we're going to get. You are using the same shots, same dialogue, same blocking, same music, same everything. Everyone has done the work for you with a lot of the meaningful stuff, but it's up to you to make sure you capture all the ways that it could fall apart or gap. And then, of course, what does that mean then? Should people see this? Because we need to say this earlier. Go and see the original. Do not see the remake. There is no fucking point. It is just a worse version of a better story. There's nothing to gain.
See the original.
Yeah. I guess that's a long way of saying, yeah, there's stuff in it that's good, but it all belongs to the original. So that's kind of how I feel about it, I guess.
Since you've already touched on a lot, even though it's going to come up frequently throughout this conversation, the animation thing, I suppose, to kind of summarize it would be, I think that a lot of people's big problem with the existence of the live-action remakes is specifically that they often make changes that they don't like to the story, that, some new writer or director comes along and goes, "Ooh, I can fix this one." And that they reliably don't. And it seems like for a lot of people, that is essentially as far as it goes with their problem with the existence of these movies. And so then when you get something like the How to Train Your Dragon remake, which more so than any live-action remake I've seen, makes a very concerted effort to rarely deviate from essentially all of the beat-for-beat moments in the film, it seems like that earns it praise, because you could say that, a lot of live-action remakes could be presented as you give somebody a reference that they need to redraw, and they're like, yeah, I can do that, and then they just make something that looks like shit. Meanwhile, this is more like tracing that reference image, but your hand's kind of shaky. And so
you're using your left hand instead of your right.
Yeah, exactly. It's like that's a good way of putting it, actually. You're using your less dominant hand. And so you end up with something that's like, yeah, it looks similar, but it just looks entirely worse.
Like, I see what you were trying to do.
Yeah, exactly. But at the same time, it's like you've got a lot of just generally worse attributes for a lot of the reasons that Muller has already sort of outlined. But to sort of tie it back to that initial point, it seems like there are plenty of people whose problem with the existence of these films is simply that they change them. I have a bigger problem with their existence in general, because I think it speaks to a preference that a lot of people in the audience have that bugs me, which is this attitude that if an animated story is adapted to live action, it has been made legitimate. You can even see this kind of attitude reflected in some of the things that have been said. I believe, Dean DeBlois, who was one of the co-directors with Chris Sanders on the original How to Train Your Dragon, said something along the lines that he was treating the original film like a test screening. Which there are a lot, I think that is essentially an attitude that a lot of people have. How often do you see people advocate for animated remakes of live-action films? You might see people advocate for animated spin-offs of live-action things, and it feels like they're often treated as such. Like that new Predator, like, anthology animated film, I haven't really seen anybody talking about it. it got released straight to Hulu, I think, instead of getting like a big theatrical release, because it's kind of recognized as being like a secondary piece of content. Even though, again, it's not like it exists in a radically different medium where that sort of thing can be justified. Animation is not a medium. Animation is a tool. It is a means of conveying a story. It's a means of conveying a story that is present in film, in television, in video games. But for some reason, it's almost treated as if it is a different medium and an inferior medium, which I find pretty silly. When if you want to have the fight about which medium is like the most potent, you can make a strong case for animation being more reliable than live action because of the fact that every single thing that happens in that film or television show, it has to go through somebody who has to make it all frame by frame or with tweening, but still that there's that amount of consideration potentially from multiple people for very small things because it has to be done. But I don't like doing that. Like I don't like having a fight about which mechanism of telling a story is best, because at their best all of them are excellent. The problem, but this is just an attitude that's present, and I believe it's an attitude that is essentially being bolstered by people saying, "Yeah, no, this is worth going to see," even though, as has already been pointed out, you're watching more or less the same movie, but generally worse, like in every regard. The performances are worse. The clash of essentially the animated elements with live action elements is incredibly jarring when it wasn't before. I mean, and then it's even down to just like a lot more specific things of, yeah, it might well be shot for shot, but some of the expressions aren't the same. Some of the cues with the music are off. You're watching
a lot of the
film
gags and jokes are way worse.
A lot of them are worse, or they get cut, because again, there are plenty of jokes that you have in an animated film that aren't going to be easily translated over to a live action format, and it's almost like they recognize this sometimes when they're making this film, like, oh, that won't work, we should probably get rid of that. And so at that point, it's like, so why does this? It's kind of an awkward thing. As much as it's fucking annoying that you can point to a film, you can point to a lot of the Disney live action remakes where they make these radical changes that ruin everything. There is an argument to be made that maybe you should be trying to make a bit of an effort to make it a little bit different, because if you just make the same movie, why would you watch that rather than the original? It's like the looming sort of cloud, the dark cloud that hangs over this movie is, just watch the original. Why would you watch this instead of the original? The original is better.
It's longer and worse.
It's longer and worse, exactly. So yeah, I don't like it, even though I would have to concede that because it essentially takes, you could say that a lot of the way that the Disney remakes do it is that they will paraphrase the beats in the original film, but the paraphrasing is often inaccurate and bad. In this case, it is much more like they were using it as like a beat for beat. This is how we need to do the story of trying to mirror each of those beats, but longer and generally less efficient. And at that point, why would you watch this instead of just watching the original film? So yeah, I don't like it, even if I have to concede essentially that because they are doing the same story, that what you have at its foundation is solid. But I feel like the easiest way to clear it up is that the original version of How to Train Your Dragon takes a solid story and executes it very well, whereas this one executes it with, at best, mixed results, and at worst, just generally, consistently, reliably inefficiently. So don't watch it, obviously.
Yeah, why?
Just watch the original.
But makes for an interesting conversation piece, considering this has not quite been done yet, and it's actually embarrassing that I'm saying this. That like a faithful attempt at somewhat faithfully adapting an animated film. It's like that's we've not really had that as of this scale, so it's it brings up new conversations, which I suppose is of interest.
It does bring up new conversations, and I suppose it invites a sort of almost like a new approach compared to the way we just had Lilo and Stitch, which was its own
abominable
method of essentially. Well, it's horrible, but I guess we had our own way of going about talking about the remake and the original. The way that we will go about it this time is a little bit different. And I figure that the easiest way to essentially start it out is to begin by sort of looking at the original film. I figure that that's a worthwhile thing to do because How to Train Your Dragon, the original, is quite good. For many people, it is one of their favorite DreamWorks films. I would say that it is one of the best DreamWorks films. It feels like it's in the conversation with like Shrek 1 and 2, Kung Fu Panda, Puss in Boots 2, Prince of Egypt. It's very entertaining and potent and meaningful. And you can see, I would say, the similarities between How to Train Your Dragon and Lilo and Stitch in certain ways, which makes sense given that the same directors worked on it. But I would also say that you can see the similarities between How to Train Your Dragon and the Wild Robot as well, which was directed solo by Chris Sanders, which I imagine will emerge as a point of sort of inspection as we progress. But I figure that the best way to start is at the start of the film.
I would even say it's kind of remarkable how similar How to Train Your Dragon and Lilo and Stitch are when you broaden out their main plot points.
Yes. I think that all three. I think that Lilo and Stitch, How to Train Your Dragon, and Wild Robot, if you wanted to, you could describe them as being bound by the same core theme.
Wild Robot.
So maybe I would say that if you could say that Lilo and Stitch, How to Train Your Dragon, and the Wild Robot all deal with the idea that a character that is out of place in a world. Or where there is some conflict or friction, or is in some way ostracized or outcast, is able to integrate into a community and learn from the community as the community learns from them, and everybody is made better off for it.
I thought you were going to go in the family direction, of which I would still concede that is
family,
applicable.
You could go with family, but I almost feel like you can broaden it out to community if you wanted to do it reliably, because it's the idea that the connection makes everybody's lives better. Everybody learns from each other, and they integrate, and their uniqueness thrives and is supported. You know,
because depending on how broad you get, a lot of stories can very easily connect. I was more so thinking about how Hiccup and Toothless, in an absolutely bonding friendship way, complete each other somewhat in this story. Same for Lilo and Stitch. Meanwhile, it's more parenthood for the Wild Robot. It comes across as. Like,
I guess you could say that Roz is completed by Bright Bill and
you
vice
can.
versa.
It's just that dynamic of almost brother sister brother parent child is
it's like sure. Stepping into roles and accepting them and using them to flourish.
Yeah, but there's definitely connection, and there's a reason why this works. It's as a sort of, which is cool as well because of how different all three of them are in terms of like genre and more surface level attributes like aliens versus dragons versus robots.
It's safe to say that Chris Sanders enjoys critters in his stories as well.
And boy, so do we. More critters, please.
Yeah, no, I do. I think it's safe to say that Chris Sanders is a bit underrated as a storyteller. Given what he's accomplished. But I also saw somebody say like, well, would it go against your standard to do comparisons? Like, no? I don't know why you said. Did you say that when we did Lilo and Stitch? Because we did.
What about fucking Last of Us? I swear, the sheer amount of work I put into editing those fucking things, like. I feel bad because I don't even know that people even remember what like the work was in those episodes. But no, we compare all the time. I don't know why this is so difficult to understand. It's like the remake not doing something that's in the original does not make it worse. It is whether or not the choices are obviously worse or better, which is possible. It's always possible.
Yeah.
Yep.
And obviously, using comparison between the two is a really easy way to illustrate that very.
This is how it was made. They were using this as a blueprint, one of the most obvious and explicit blueprints in the history of making films.
Relevant and potent for conversation.
Absolutely, and it gives us an excuse to praise the shit out of the original film.
To praise the original, which is something that I am inclined to do. I suppose what's interesting is that if someone said, is it in your top 10? It's like, dude, top 10's fucking competitive, all right?
Yeah, I don't
animated films? That's a tough one.
For animated films, top 10 is really competitive. Pixar is a little bit too awesome in their golden age.
Hey, they earned it, man.
And there are still other ones that that would be in the mix, but I think it's safe to say that this is one of DreamWorks' best movies. I think it sits I think it sits pretty comfortably alongside Shrek 1, 2, Kung Fu Panda, Puss in Boots 2, Prince of Egypt. As has sort of been highlighted through this discussion, it's really strong. It's got a really strong story at its core that is well thought out, lots of parallels, lots of reincorporation, plenty of good character stuff, thematically super potent. I guess the interesting thing is that if in the comparison of the given that we talked about Lilo and Stitch, I do think that Lilo and Stitch beats out How to Train Your Dragon. But I do also wonder how much of that might be personal preference.
It's certainly my personal preference.
I have a lot of nostalgia for.
We're talking
Lilo and
about the
Stitch,
goats here, so it's.
We are, so calm down. Like these are all.
I feel like it's fair for anybody to move all of these around at their whim, because I personally prefer Lilo and Stitch as well, but I think this film is great.
Oh, it is great. Absolutely.
Yeah. It's I guess again, the interesting thing is that for me, I didn't watch How to Train Your Dragon until a couple of years ago. Whereas Lilo and Stitch obviously was again one of those early stories, It's sort of watch that one in the theater. And it feels like part of that may contribute essentially to because a lot of my favorite animated films skew towards essentially the ones that I watched as a kid when they were coming out. And I think the reality is that it's hyper competitive when you think about like the best of the best. When you got like WALL-E, The Incredible, Shrek 1 and 2, Kung Fu Panda, The Iron Giant, Lion King, Lilo and Stitch, Aladdin. Like there's a lot of Wallace and Gromit, Curse of the Were-Rabbit.
I was about to say stop motion's not even in there yet, but it would be.
Yeah. Wallace and Gromit, Curse of the Were-Rabbit's pretty competitive for that top 10. Chicken Run as well.
Yeah.
Coraline's quite good. There's a lot of ones to choose from, but again, it's almost like at this point, the only thing that I'm kind of highlighting is there are a lot of great animated films. This is one of them. And it's funny, a lot of the ones that I've already mentioned, a lot of them have not had their live action remakes, but don't you fucking worry. They are coming now.
Before we get to our conclusive discussions here, you have missed out one of the most substantive and significant additions to the remake that the original actually lacks, which is a heartbreak, I would say. There's a huge story that is added in for a character that previously didn't have it. I think it's just incredible. I'd like to sort of... It's going to take a while, but chat. If you'll indulge me, I'll give you the full story from start to finish, because we deliberately avoided it in order to give it to you all at once. Because
we didn't want it to overshadow the rest of the film and our discussion.
Yeah, well,
and everything. And
I'll admit
this,
the
elephant in the room.
This kind of embarrasses the original a little bit. It's like, whoops, you probably should have had this. So, the remake put this in because it knew that this was going to kind of blow audiences away. So. We could say near the beginning of the film, when they're making fun of Hiccup for being embarrassing, the snot lout says, my dad's super proud of me, and then in comes Peter Serafinowicz. You know him from many roles. He's an actor who I feel has never quite got his spotlight when he deserves it. He pops up in everything and is amazing in everything. One of the most notable ones, of recent memory would be his role in The Gentleman, for anybody who's seen that show. He's only in one episode and he's fucking hilarious in it. But he's also used The Tick, briefly. He was in Shaun of the Dead. It's 4 in the fucking morning. Yes, he was. I liked him in that too. I don't think they should have killed him in Guardians 1. I think they should have kept him.
Yeah, but he died a fucking hero. He saved the planet.
He did indeed.
He saved the planet.
So Darth Maul as well did an interview with the guy who played Supreme Chancellor Valorum in The Phantom Menace, and both of them agreed that the experience was incredibly boring.
Well, he plays Snotlout's father, and so he says, "My dad's super proud of me," and he says back, "Don't talk to me in public." So See, that's there's a bit of a dynamic happening here. So next
okay,
scene, because I'm going to lay them. I'm going to lay them all out. It's going to take a while. Next time, there's a reference to this. He says, "It's not loud." He says, "Dad, we've been doing the dragon trial of fire, or whatever. It's and the dad doesn't say anything back to him. It's a one-sided conversation. And then when Snotlout's hitting the eyes of the red dread dragon, it's very shocking, very dramatic. We cut down to the father, who says, "Is that my son?" And yeah, that's it.
I was just thinking that what this film really needed was like a second parallel plot line involving one of the kids trying to win the respect of his father. That in no way was like a weird, odd similarity to like the main character's journey to win the respect of his father as well.
What it made me realize, because there are people out there who consider this a strong addition to the narrative because it is on theme, is that they made a huge mistake in the original by not having every single character have a dad that just says explicitly, "I don't like you," and then at the end of the film says, "I like you" to the children. Because that would have been on theme.
That's really great. It's just really well done.
It would have been supportive of the overall meaning of the film. I think that it has benefited greatly by having "Don't talk to me," and then, "Wow, that's my son." That's, some might cynically say, that's worse than script notes, let alone being in an actual script with, like actual dialogue. But I think it's brilliant. And thank goodness that when left to his own devices to add his own meaningful stories to stories that already exist, that Dean decided, you know what? I'm going to put the most substantive fucking tale in How to Train Your Dragon live-action remake that you could ever imagine. It has 3 beats.
Stroke of genius that I think explains why this movie is the top-rated of all the live-action adaptations on Rotten Tomatoes. It's that kind of touch of character work that's really elevated it above Lilo and Stitch.
I can't believe it might be the top of the live action.
In case it hasn't become apparent,
just they
I at this point essentially believe that the main person worthy of the credit for Lilo and Stitch and How to Train Your Dragon is Chris Sanders. And the reason why is because having seen what both of them have done on their own, The Wild Robot is quite good. How to Train Your Dragon 2 and 3 are not good, and this remake is not good. So what else might it include other than it was mainly your boy Chris who fucking did. Who is responsible for a lot of the good stuff. I don't know.
Now, as much as you were a little robot there, you could understand everything you said. Don't you worry.
Oh yeah, we understood. Yeah, yeah, that's why I didn't say anything because it was good enough to understand. Right. So, but yeah, it is. Boy, this is just obviously way worse.
Really lucky. That's I don't know. It's just. Yeah, like the choices made in terms of trying to change this story to improve it are like just all worse.
Bizarre. Like it's the a lot of them are just the strange like innocuous line changes that don't really help and don't really take away. They're just weird that a line or here has changed. Then we have the scenes that they added, which are just a mistake. And it just makes things worse. We have the poaching of this, the lines to everything good about this movie is just stuff that they copied, and all of the stuff that they copied was worse, essentially. You don't get credit for that.
No, I guess. All right, so it is a little annoying. Hold on, we are in Singapore, aren't we? Oh, geez,
we are in Singapore. We've always been in Singapore.
All right.
Yeah, this one is.
Damn it. Okay, well, just, all right. Well, so, yeah, I'm a little annoyed that essentially this film seems to be... This film, the cinema score, which I believe ranks how audiences perceive films, the cinema score for the live-action remake of How to Train Your Dragon is identical to the reception that the original film received from audiences. It does seem like a not unusual perspective on this film is, it's about the same. It's pretty annoying. Considering that it obviously isn't, and it bothers me a lot that the attitude seems to be, this is how you do it. So what? You just copy it, but it's generally just worse? Why is this being held up as like a good standard?
It's like I
for
said,
these films.
only in our nightmare world could that ever be something that even sounds remotely coherent as a statement, because if this were the first live-action remake, we could then comfortably say, like, oh, not a good action, not a good move. This is just categorically worse, and it's unfortunate that anyone would encourage someone to, oh yeah, just go check this remake out. It's like, no, check out the original, obviously. It seems like everyone even admits that the original's better, but simultaneously says, yeah, go check it out. It's like, no!
Yeah, go watch it. It's like, just watch the original. Watch the original. Get the experience. Don't...
This
Why
doesn't
would you watch...
offer anything.
Nope. The only thing it offers is, again, if you have a weird attitude on animation where you're like, well, that's just like cartoons and silly stuff, like, it's not like a real movie or anything. And if that's an attitude, you got to work on that stuff, man. You're missing out on a lot of great stuff if you actually have that attitude towards stories where, like, well, if it's an illustration or if it's, a 3D animation, I mean, I can't take that seriously. I mean, geez, can't watch that. Like, that's a problem you got to work on because you're missing out on a lot of great stories. But why would you bother watching? Why would you bother spending a considerable amount of money? Like, I don't know how much it costs in America, but like, it costs like $20 to go watch a movie here.
10,
individually,
$15 per ticket here, yeah.
$20 per ticket to go watch How to Train Your Dragon when you could just, like, for that much money, you could just buy it on Blu-ray, or you could just watch it on a streaming service. Watch that on your TV. You have a great time. There's no need to be watching the new one. Why is it being advocated like, yeah, go watch the new one? It's generally worse, and it's basically the same film in a sort of broad sense. Yeah, but yeah, go watch it. I don't get it. I don't understand. And
why
fundamentally,
waste your time? Why encourage others to waste their time and money?
And here's a big difference, because it's like, some people complained about Snow White. We also complained about Snow White. We are not the same. It does seem like, again, the attitude a lot of people have. I have a big problem with these films existing, period. A lot of people's problem seems to be that they exist and make changes that they personally don't like. There is a difference between that. It's not even necessarily an invalid perspective that your main concern is with the idea of changing them. But you have to understand, you advocate for this film, you are effectively advocating for more Lilo and Stitch. You are advocating for more Snow White. You're advocating for more, like, Beauty and the Beast. You're advocating for more Mulan. Every time I say this, I'm referring to the live-action remakes, by the way. You're advocating for more Cruella. Of course you are. The only signal that's sent here is, oh, this is a good idea. Let's make more live-action remakes. You're essentially courting more stories that you like to get butchered. So I don't even know why you do it. The way easier standard is, just don't make them. Don't make any of them. Don't make any of them at all. The only circumstance where I think I could even accept that these exist is if essentially the wizard told me it's better. They actually did improve it. But that's never happened. That's like
we haven't even come close to that.
It would appear that is actually an impossibility. And in the wake of that, and in addition to the fact that these films and their success is indicative and says something about the general audience's disinterest in animation as a medium, it's way easier to just say, don't watch them, don't make them, stop, and give it up. Just make some original live-action films if that's something you want to do, not this. But instead, the success of this, if you advocate for it, you can't cry if Shrek gets remade and it's some bullshit. You can't cry if Iron Giant gets remade and it's some bullshit.
When?
Yes, when these are made, because they are now inevitable.
Yeah, because I get the angle you're doing with responsibility, but like the sheer amount of fucking money this and Lilo Stitch have made has reset all the progress anything was made with like Snow White or anything else.
People are like, oh, Tangled's on pause? Hoo-hoo. It's like, why did you think that was ever going to stop? These were always going to make a whole bunch of money.
All they'll ever think is not the foray into adapting into live action is a mistake. They'll never think that. They'll just think, oh, there's some stories no one cares about, so Snow White sucks, apparently. That's the problem. It's just like, yeah,
Yeah.
thanks.
So we just got to do it for Moana, or we got to do it for Frozen, or we got to or of course Pandora's box will be opened eventually with all the Incredibles. That's a good idea.
It seems
and you
to
know
me
what
that
the fucking sad part is? From a financial perspective, it is. That'll make $1 billion if they do that.
Incredibles live
Meanwhile,
action. And it's funny as well because out of the Pixar library
movie that's coming out. Yeah.
Out of the Pixar library, it's like, which one would they do first? Like, it's gonna be between Toy Story and Incredibles because,
or the Incredibles. It'll between
it's
those
like
two.
there's a reason to do a timeline like match, I suppose, but I just can't see them resisting Incredibles. It's like, oh, you got to. That's gonna make so much money.
And again, you know, now I'm not going to say that people have to go out of their way to watch original animated films they're not interested in, but the new Pixar movie that's coming out this month, Elio, looks like it's going to be one of their biggest bombs ever. What do you think that conveys to them when that happens?
Dude, the trailers for that film have been so shit.
Things.
No, I agree. I'm not like I think it's silly to be this idea like because I see people on Twitter bitch about it. Like people say they want original films and they don't show up. It's like, yeah, but the ones you point to are like not interesting.
Good original films, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I want them to be good. But at the end of the day, you know, it still speaks to a problem. Like I like Toy Story 5, that's happening. That's just a good decision from a financial standpoint. The Incredibles 3, that's just a good idea too. These are just good financial decisions that they're making. They are consistently rewarded for doing this. Sequels, remakes. Snow White is very much an anomaly. Most of them are very successful. So, you know, there will be more. And I don't know. I mean, it's like, yeah, it seems like there's a good amount of people advocating essentially for more effectively by saying that this film should be supported. For what? For doing like what could only be considered the most basic bare bones of what you would expect.
I don't even know that we can say they
that much.
Yeah, like, I feel they didn't reach bare minimum, as in, you're supposed to copy all of the great elements, improve anything that's weaker, and maybe if you add some new stuff, make sure it complements the spirit and theme of the original. Did they do any of those three things? I don't think so.
Yeah, are there... Because there's probably there's some things that I would change about, you know, How to Train Your Dragon. Little things here and there. But maybe we need to add a line
well, like
or
we
two
said,
here, or...
Transferring
like,
it
little things like that
from animation to live action, it just demands changes. But you've got to be careful about how you make them. That's all.
They have to be done with purpose. They have to be done like intentionally.
They're not going to do that. They're never going to do that. No. They're just going to reliably be bad. At this point, how many live action remakes are we up to? Like 15 in the last decade. They're all worse. So what reason do you have in much the same way that it's pretty silly to expect that Fantastic Four and Superman are going to be great. It's fairly, not that they can't be, but it is fairly silly to assume that at this point when the track record is so clear on stuff like that and for these live action remakes. They're all worse to varying degrees.
It would be interesting to see though. So let's say like looking back in maybe 10, 15, even 20 years time at, for example, merchandise sales around these franchises and see what is actually still shifting. Because my sort of prediction would be actually it's not going to be anything from the live action film. It's still going to be stuff from the animated film because that's the thing that actually has the heart and the soul to it. It's the thing that earned the popularity that these films are exploiting. It's the thing that actually has cultural legs, so to speak. Whereas these ones do seem to be, because there's 15 years is it since the animated How to Train Your Dragon came out? Yeah, that's 15 years of an already quite popular movie gaining effectively a generation and a half almost of new fans. The people who first watched it, the people who came to it later because everyone else liked it, and the kids of the people who first watched it are probably starting to age into the point of watching it as well. All you have to do to get those people on seats for this movie is just to say, hey, it's this movie in live action. I don't know how many new fans it's really generating as opposed to just exploiting an audience that's grown quite large over time. And whether this is anything more than effectively like a junky fix of energy for people who go to the cinema to see it. I don't imagine that it is. Like, it's not adding anything. I don't see where the merch sales come from the live action version of Toothless as opposed to the animated version. Like, one of those is sellable, one of them is not. I just think these things will just be a flash in the pan. And it kind of makes you interested as well to see, like, what is the performance of the live action sequels going to be like? Because it's almost like the Minecraft movie. It has immense mimetic memory value, and then it disappears. And can you really keep that going if all you're doing is just plundering this almost empty well of content. I don't necessarily see the How to Train Your Dragon 2 live action film doing half as well as this one's done.
Sure, it's because I guess the thing is that with stuff like Disney and DreamWorks, there is a degree to which they can replenish their library with new stuff. But even then, you do kind of wonder. It's like if you were to look at Disney's films in the last 5 years, which of them feel like they'd be particularly primed for a live action remake? Because like I guess Encanto's probably got the best chance. But what else that Disney has made? Like Ryan the Last Dragon? Nah. I don't think so.
No.
What else have they made recently? And in terms of
Coco?
Pixar,
What was the one they did for their
Coco-
100th
Coco-
anniversary that completely bombed?
Oh,
Was
Wish that ain't happening. Yeah, Wish. ain't
Wish.
happening.
no one gives, that was we don't.
But that's almost the thing. It's like they are actually running into a problem, which is they used to be in an era where there was a film that came out every year or every 2 years that essentially presents itself as being ripe to be exploited and plundered. But that pace is gradually diminishing with each new thing that they're making. It would only be sequels, like if they made sequels to Frozen, or this, if they made, because Frozen is inevitable, obviously, as a live action remake, but they can then do remakes of the sequels. And I mean, they've tried it. I remember people coping that Mufasa wasn't going to do well and that Sonic was going to beat it. Mufasa made like $800 million. This ain't coming to an end, guys.
People just go and see these movies. They just go. Yep. They just go and see them. And that's just the reality is like this is just as much a bottom-up problem. People go and watch these movies. They spend hundreds of millions of dollars on these trash shit films. And so what do you think? I mean, a corporation's a beast that you train with your behavior in a manner of speaking. I mean, like that. Of course, they're going to keep doing it. They'll keep doing it and doing it until they physically cannot do it anymore because people keep going.
But I guess my Duma take is not necessarily that people go to watch these things because they always will. Like, thing I used to like is in new form in cinema, I will watch. Like that's the general audience mentality. Like, I think the more concerning thing is the declining number of things that will eventually be ripe for a live action adaptation. Because so much focus and attention and money is being spent on these, and yet there's not a huge amount of new IP coming to replace them. So eventually, you get to the point where cinema has subsisted as this parasite for such a long time. Nothing particularly new has been made. You will run out of live-action adaptations, or the audience will get bored of them. What do you do then? Where are the new stories coming from? And the answer appears to be, I don't know, someone will do them. One day, maybe, I don't know.
Every couple of years, maybe every like 5 or 6 years, there'll be one thing that sort of pops up that has like a big splash that becomes like the next big franchise compared to, again, and I guess that's a problem, is we used to exist in an ecosystem where things had the potential to essentially like appear and thrive. I mean, you think about it in the video game industry as well, like a lot of the things that are AAA now, they didn't really start that way. They started off as like smaller projects. I mean, hell, like The Witcher, for example. I mean, that first game is like, that's not a AAA game, and now it's a AAA franchise, and that applies to a lot of different things. Hell, you could even say it kind of applies to something like Call of Duty. Call of Duty was one of many World War II first-person shooters that was releasing at that time. Yeah. It wasn't a guarantee that Mario was going to become like the mascot. It wasn't a guarantee that like, The Legend of Zelda would emerge as one of their most relevant franchises. It wasn't guaranteed that Halo was going to be the flagship series for the Xbox. Whereas now it's almost like things are pre-positioned, and it almost highlights the unsustainability. Shit like Concord of like, we ordain that this will be a franchise, and then nobody
like
likes
Anthem.
it, and then it's like,
Ten-year
oh shit,
plan.
Anthem. What else? Forspoken.
What's Lawbreakers?
What else is that? Yes, the clip.
Yeah,
he said he wanted to make $1 billion IP. Like he entered into it with the intention of making it Battleborn. God,
that's right.
Whoops.
Battleborn, yeah.
Just as an update, by the way, so Lilo and Stitch on 815 million, so just slaughtered. And then How to Train Your Dragon, that the first Friday, 36 million to be fair. So it's just like, well, we're already on to what that's going to be. Mission Impossible is frozen out at around 460 million, so that's fucked. Which is funny because that's more than Brave New World actually finished at the box office with 415.
Ooh.
And
So-
Brave New World is more than Thunderbolts made, which is less than $400 million.
So yeah,
Oh,
just
boy.
it's like woohoo, a bunch of bad movies are doing badly, and then it's like except Lilo and Stitch and How to Train Your Dragon doing amazingly
Bad
in
movies
both.
are also doing great. Yeah.
Yeah,
And except Jurassic World is going to make $1 billion probably.
absolutely. And who knows just how bad Fantastic Four or Superman may very well be. And I'll be very curious what the box office is for both of those.
Well, the projections right now are pretty high. Which will, yeah, of course we will see. Who can say? But I mean, yeah, I don't know. I mean, because it's like, what's the consolation? It's like, I don't know. Be happy that you got the original animated films in the first place. I guess. Be thankful that you got them. Pretend that these don't exist, even though they are not going to come to an end. Yeah, I don't know. You need to hold on to those original animated films that you like and advocate for them. That would be an important one. I think that it's very easy to become susceptible to what a bunch of cynical losers say. Of like, oh, well, you only liked it because you watched it when it was a kid. You only liked it because of the nostalgia value. Oh, there's actually like no difference between like this one or the live action remake / any of the new sludgy films that come out. I see that happen a lot. Don't let people do that. Don't let people convince you that's the case. A lot of the times, if you're thinking about a film that came out in the 90s or the 2000s, like an animated film that you enjoy, it's actually pretty good in all likelihood. In fact, it might actually be one of the best movies like made in like the last like 30 or 40 years. And it's you shouldn't let people essentially convince you like, nah, it's not the same. No, these are the same. Well, actually, these films kind of do need to exist because again, it's a silly argument. Barely anybody alive today was a child when Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs released. But a lot of you have probably all seen it. And you probably didn't know when you were a kid that it was, 40, 50, 60, 70 years older than any given animated film that you were watching at the time. I sure as hell didn't know. I didn't know that Cinderella or Sleeping Beauty or The Jungle Book were notably older than Aladdin or The Lion King or Tarzan or Hercules.
Yeah, they just
it's just a
little
silly
different.
argument.
That's all.
That's it, yeah. It's a silly argument. The films are there. They're available for you. They're the better versions of the stories. They're whimsical. They're charming. They're thematically potent, well-executed, beautiful stories. And why would you watch that? Why would you watch the live-action remakes when you can just watch those? I don't get it. Don't watch it. Don't watch them.
Because they make money.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's like whenever anyone talks about the movies, it'll always be they refer to the originals. They will never be referring to the remakes. They're just inferior, and everyone knows it, even if they don't know it at the time.
It's certainly true. I do wonder though whether a sensible studio might do something like pre-screening, like a new animated short before every new live-action remake, just because like you're going to get so many people going to the cinema to watch the live-action remake. You are going to need new IP events. Why not test out some new ideas in animated form relatively cheaply, maybe 15-minute shorts before your live-action thing comes out? Because if one of those things takes off, you've got a pre-existing audience, which is now going to tell you that's the kind of thing we want to see more of. And that's an idea that you can take away and say, well, let's try and develop that into something longer, a feature film or like another animated feature film. We can create something new whilst also bankrolling that creation off of something we know is going to make money, like a live action remake. At least that's a compromise position of saying, well, the audience will come for this, whatever, but we also need to create as opposed to just parasitize what we've previously made. I'd like to see that because they used to do a couple of like short, very short little animated things before certain movies. Bring that back. That might be a good idea.
No, How to Train Your Dragon 2, Despicable Me live action, Incredibles live action. Except those are coming. Just be happy with what you got.
Endless trash.
What's that, sorry?
Endless trash.
Yeah. But again, I don't know. It feels like George Carlin. Nothing's gonna get better. Nothing will improve. Be happy with what you've got. Just...
Well, that was funny. But,
How to Train Your Dragon, the original movie, it's really good.
Yep.
Remake is lame. Don't watch it.
Suck
Watch the
balls.
original. Mm-hmm.
Yep. Don't see it.
Yeah, and hopefully, the coverage sort of illustrates exactly how they went wrong, because it's a little bit more difficult to translate than simple, broad talking points like you can do with a lot of remakes. This one, it takes, you need to pay attention to the artistry. You really do. It can't just be as simple as they assassinated X character, or they did this, or they did that, or the plot line's completely altered to the point where it just annihilates the spirit of the original. It's not that simple, but it's still just a bit anti-art, I think you could argue.
Yep, totally. I think it's pretty anti-art.